Well, thank you, Thomas. And I wanted to thank V2 for having me here and having me do this show. It's been great, and also, of course, the people at FACT in Liverpool who created this, or started this tour in conjunction with V2. So. And also came up with the idea initially of bringing Marta and myself together to have a conversation about this, which is really going to be great, I hope. Thomas was saying first we do this, and then but first we do this, and I was thinking my daughter was a softball player when she was in high school, and her coach would always, because there was some talent on the team, but they were made lots of errors. They would always be dropping balls, and the coach and not making the throws, and missing, and swinging at the wrong time. And the coach sat them all down at one point, and I happened to be there, and he said, first you make the catch, then you make the throw. So first we make the catch here. Let's see. So I thought I would talk about my work just briefly from the perspective of touch, because as you can see, I want people to touch and play with all my pieces, and it's essential to the way I work. And this is an outline for a long talk I do about touch. And I thought I would put this up here so you can kind of see a little bit about how things interconnect for me. I'm not going to do this whole thing, of course, because this is going to be a short little version. But I will start with at the same place, and that's with the pleasure centers in the brain, because when I was in 1963, when I was in college, I was taking a psychology class, and we saw this article. We were all given this article to read about the pleasure centers in the brain, how a rat will, who has an electrode, as you can see, inserted in this particular spot in their brain, will push a lever, indefinitely to get the stimulation at the pleasure center. They will ignore food. They will ignore, other female rats that are in estrus. They will just go for this pleasure. And this kid sitting next to me said, the whispers in my ear while the professor is explaining this, it says, the pleasure centers are connected to your skin. Now, I don't know if that's true. Actually, Isabella here might know if this is true or not, but I thought I didn't want to find out if it was true, because I like this idea very much. I like the idea that touch was something that we might crave more than anything else. But even if it isn't directly wired to our skin, I think touch is essentially pleasurable. I think it's because our bodies impose this essential isolation, that that when we get to test that boundary, when we get to push against this, kind of like kissing, you get this experience that's completely different. There's an old song, you get to get a little taste of the other at the same time as you're connecting with yourself, at the same, knowing yourself and knowing something about something outside of you at the same instant. I don't know if you know this old song, which I'm going to do a very bad version of. It's is it in his walk? Oh no, it's not the way. Oops, I've already started in the wrong key. And you're not to listen to all I say, but if you want to know if he loves you so, it's in his kiss. That's where it is. So, so I think touch kind of defines, who we are. Our skins are boundaries, and so it makes this sense of identity, of our own identity possible. When we touch something, it's kind of a mirror, in a sense. And my artwork, as you can see, requires touch, and it requires participation and often teamwork for a full experience. So if you touch the work and you feel it work, you kind of understand things in a different way. I think our bodies our bodies have knowledge that our minds and our eyes, don't quite have any longer. This was all we knew when we were children, but now we know things in a different way. So I'm kind of getting this very brief thing. I'm going to kind of use touch as a touchstone for discussing my work. I don't know if you know, the touchstone is this. I don't know exactly what mineral it is, but it's a rock that if you strike gold across it, it will make a certain colored streak. But if you were to take a piece of brass that looked exactly like gold, it would make a green streak, and you would know you wouldn't have gold. So the touchstone is sort of the emblem of truth. With a touchstone you can tell truth from falsity, and with touch you can tell truth from falsity. A lot of, I just like this image a lot. But anyway, I especially like Joseph in the background, because Joseph doesn't have a clue about what's going on in the world. He is not in contact in any way. I don't know, the baby Jesus is so creepy. Anyway, a lot of what I'm about to say comes from a book entitled Touch by a novelist, Gabriele Josie Pavici. It's a book of essays, and this image is not from Gabriele Josie Pavici, but I would throw this in anyway. So this is from Josie Pavici. This is a still from the end of the movie City Lights by Charlie Chaplin. And in the movie, Chaplin, as the tramp, who his back is towards us here, is has fallen in love with this at that point a blind flower girl, and she thinks he's a rich man because in the way he stumbles onto her, he has walked through a rich man's car, so he enters her space, as it were, through this implied richness, and he encourages her to think that he's quite wealthy, and he goes through all these shenanigans. The whole movie is about him trying to find money to help her with an operation to regain her sight and to pay her rent, and he winds up giving her thousands of dollars at the end, which he has come upon, legally, but in a way that winds up getting him arrested. And when he gets out of jail, he sees her in this flower shop. Now she has her sight restored, and she doesn't recognize him, of course. She thinks he's just this tramp. So she goes to give him, 50 cents. He's given her $5,000. She gives him 50 cents. But nevertheless, she doesn't recognize him until the moment when she grabs his hand to put the money in it, which is the exact inverse gesture that he had taken to give her, the $5,000. He had taken her hand and placed the money in it. And, at that moment, suddenly she says, he says, "So you can see now?" And she says, "Oh, yes, I can see now." Of course, implying that she can understand all of her own prejudices against tramps. She'd been waiting for this rich man to come back and all this stuff. Anyway, I always get a little chill out of this moment, in this movie, and the question that Josie Pavici raises is, why do we get this? I'm hoping you have some reaction anyway. Why do we get this feeling? And I think it's because we can understand. We don't know this experience exactly, but we all have bodies, and because we all have a body, we can understand other people's experience. The very fact of having a body allows us to empathize with someone else and to understand things and to communicate. Anyway, some of this I've already said elsewhere. So this is a piece that's downstairs, which you may not have gotten to yet. But generally, I'm not going to show you pieces in the show. But this is sort of a very direct touching piece where you're directly touching another person, except that there is a bit of latex protection between you and the other person, which is kind of appropriate. So I was going to show you this, a little bit about another piece that isn't here, a piece that requires participation rather than witnessing. I like people to be involved, to be inside the work, rather than looking in from the outside, and to have and as Josie Pavici, one of the things he points out, which I quite liked, is he says, I mean, I'm actually extending it a bit. He says sight is free, and in a sense, it's promiscuous. That wasn't the word he used, but I can look around the room. My eyes will fall upon each of you for a second, but there's no commitment. I can look out across. I can't see too far, but I can look at fairly significant distances here. If I were in a room with a window, I could look out the window at the horizon. But if I were to touch anything that was even in this room, I have to make a commitment. I have to get up. I have to cross over to it. I have to actually have physical contact. I have to be re-engaged in a world of time, and if nothing else. So I'm going to show you a short. Oops. Yeah. Where is it? No, I had another little wrap here. Anyway, I've already said this. Here's a short video of the installation that isn't here. Oh, we forgot audio, didn't we? Oh, well, let's crank it all the way up on my tiny little laptop. I'll turn it towards you. Sorry, I forgot about that. Anyway, this is a sheet of black plastic, which becomes, here we are. I forgot about it, but everyone is ready for me to be wrong. Not quite. Not quite ready. I'll wait till you give me a signal. Anyway, you pedal the bike and you make this black plastic become an ocean. This is a piece kind of about being lost on the sea at night, and I figured that, if you're lost on the sea at night and you're making landfall, what you would be looking for is lights on the horizon. You can see at the horizon of the black plastic there are lights glowing, and that's because of the rowing on the boat. I'm on, all right. Just in time for it to be over. But anyway, the rowing is very hard work, so you get tired, and the lights flicker and they go out, so you never get home. You stay lost on the sea forever because in peace is sufficient latitude, and latitude is really only half of what you need to know about where you are, and it's the easier half at that. It's when you're out of sight at land on a starless night, you're basically lost. And I figured this is a kind of thing, this is sort of a theatrical participatory thing that I sometimes will do with my pieces to create this little scene. But the story that I have in the video is not necessarily the story that you can create when you come and play with the pieces. So I like to have that kind of thing be open, and it's sort of like a theater set that you can walk onto and perform in a way. So the installation that I wanted to talk mostly about here is right around us is the ideology of innocence, this piece was really inspired by the work of Etienne-Jules Marey, and inspired in large part by having read Marta's book, because without her book I would not have known enough technical details from her, the amazing set of pictures that she's collected in this book, not to mention the text. I would not have known how to actually recreate this work of Marey and then modify it and extend it into something that worked for me. But just as a quick brief intro to Marey, he's probably most famous for these images like this. Marta will talk more about this. I'm not really going to discuss this because she has plenty of more of Marey stuff. But I wanted to get to this image because this was I was visiting in 1994. I was visiting the Bacon Museum in Minneapolis, and I saw this mechanism, the actual thing itself. And and this is a pneumatic mechanism, unlike the photographic investigations that Marey engaged in later about motion, trying to understand motion. Earlier, he was working pneumatically, hooking people up to pneumatic sensors to try and understand motion. And in this case, he's trying to understand speech. So you put your lips over these two little hooks, and you would be speaking, and your breath would go into this tube, and all of this would be registered pneumatically on these, on these inscriptors that would be writing pneumatically. And this, this technology just like inspired me, and you'll see it all over the place in the exhibit here. And I was especially interested in this other image that I got in a pamphlet from the visit to Marey. This image, of heart simulation. Here he has trying to simulate how the heart might be working, so that he could then, investigate it. And this image, which comes from Marta's book, of a more complex heart simulation. So a year after I was in Minneapolis being amazed by this work, I was diagnosed with an aortic aneurysm and had to have heart surgery to save my life. And I'm thinking, here's this image, here's Marey's work with this very prominent aorta, and I think I've got to do something a la Marey vis-a-vis, including this in my artwork in some way. So I felt I had to do something that would reflect the fragility. I'm going to skip over that. The fragility of my own life, and also kind of capture some of the fragility from that image. This is a little video, and it's good that we have the audio. This is a little video of my experiments a la Marey, trying to figure out how to incorporate his work into the kind of things I was doing. So I make this piece of equipment to rotate this disc, and then I've got this, you'll see in a moment, these Marey style, writing apparatus, these tambours writing directly on the wood. And what I was measuring at that moment was I was trying to measure what I called people's attitude, which is how my friend is leaning. I mean, perhaps philosophically, but at least how he's leaning, physically on the stool. And he's pumping these pneumatic tambours. Now, you will see this piece is right behind everyone here, having been transformed into a completely different kind of experience, which you can have directly. We don't need to discuss it. So these are kind of Marey-style tambours, but in this case made with toothpicks and wood instead of these precision brass, drums. I have a little copper though. I know, it's a good touch. It kind of brings it back to the real world. And of course, this big wooden disc is wobbling a lot. It's so large that I added this extra component to measure how much wobble there was in the disc. because this was part of what appealed to me so much about Marey's work, was that he was so intent on investigating everything that he would apply what he wanted, his technologies and any technology he could come across, to finding out. He really wanted to understand these things. So anyway, also I discovered, you could do these wonderful remote actions, using these pneumatic tambours. And here I've got releasing these balls pneumatically. To no real purpose, just because I could do it. And then I added one more tambour for them to bounce off of. And then the secret, I think, for me to making art in general is to have waste. I need to be generating lots of stuff. I'm not sure what I'm doing yet, so I'm making organs, and this is like an aorta that has been badly abused. And that was cast over a hairdryer hose. This was cast over a yam, like a sweet potato. And the first organ that you saw was a prickly pear, a chiodi. This is an eggplant. I was eating my fruits and vegetables, trying to stay healthy. This was cast over a balloon. Not everything was exotic and healthful. And this I actually made a little wax branching thing and then cast it in latex. Here's another chayote. My neighbor had a chayote vine growing in his backyard, which meant it was also growing in my backyard because there was no way to stop it. And just at the moment when I needed it, the chayote appeared in my backyard. This was a gourd that I found on the streets of Jersey City, which is a very urban place. But there was a gourd, big green gourd on the streets that I cast, and it has an aneurysm at the neck. It kind of exploded out. And this friend of mine, after my aneurysm, this friend of mine said to me, Bernie, if only you hadn't picked that gourd up, you would never have had this problem, But I did. So, and you'll actually see a few of these parts have not only made it into the Etiology of Innocence piece that we have around us here, but a few of these parts have made it into other installations here, although some of them are sitting in a jar over there, and some of them are just in a box at home and never made it into anything. So now I'm starting to try and recreate Marey's engraving. I've got the organs mounted on the board. Maybe we could boost the audio on this a little, I don't know. But I can't figure out how I'm going to activate them yet. I mean, we're looking at the end results right in front of us here. But so I like intermixing these body parts and these fruits and vegetables. And this is more or less the way it is now, except that it's got other changes. So maybe I'm trying to regain some kind of control over my body. This is why I'm working on making a piece that comes out of my coronary condition. But this is the kind of control that I usually gravitate towards, is something like this is an outline for another investigation. I feel like I'm in control when I'm doing this. So I don't know if it's so much control as some kind of recognition of how little control I have. Anyway, I think at this point maybe I'm 1 minute and 14 seconds over, and
how can you tell?
I got this. It's going. It's still going. The more we talk about this, the longer I go. So maybe I'll turn the talk over to Marta, and switch to her presentation.
Thank you.